Rachel was attached to the film before I was, and I was a big fan of her and her work, and thought it would be great to do something with Rachel, and had seen a lot of Robert's work, and thought he was a really, really interesting director, both visually, stylistically, but also just his take on scripts and stories. And after meeting with Robert and having a really, really good chat about how he saw the film and his interpretation of the material, I was really excited and wanted to play Henry. I felt like the most important element here was the relationship between Henry and Claire, and that was going to be the focus for me. So it was about concentrating on the relationship elements of Henry, and in particular, basically speaking, the two different age groups that we find him, even though he is basically a lot of different ages, but essentially we sort of try to simplify it into sort of two time periods stylistically. So it was about trying to make choices as to what would be the differences between those two Henrys at those two ages. One before he's aware of his life with Claire, and one once he is aware of his future with Claire, and how that impacts his behaviour and how he interacts with the young Claire as well. The first Henry was more a young, carefree person who didn't really have to deal with the world and the ramifications of his disease in any other way than how it affected him, and so forth. So then when you're dealing with the older Henry, you're dealing with different moral issues and different implications and so forth. So he was basically a more mature person who was also still wary of what the ramifications of a personal relationship would be for him. So I try to make them very different, but at the same time you don't want to get too carried away. You want to remember that they're both the same person, and then you sort of gets more complex, and that you want to be able to reference them in both directions. So I wanted the audience to be able to see, the young Henry in the old Henry, and the old Henry in the young Henry to a degree as well. I always love directors that have a love affair with the camera. I love stylistic directors. I love directors who have a real vision, and whilst it's extremely important that you have a director who knows when to put a camera in a spot and let it happen between the actors, I think the camera is one of the characters in any film, and anytime you have a director who understands the camera and understands movement and how it can influence the storytelling, I get very excited. And I'd seen Robert's work, and I thought he was really interesting, and I was very excited about his existing relationship with Florian, his DP, and loved his work as well. So I was very confident going in that we were going to end up with something that was going to be visually very supportive of the story. None of us stay the same, none of us are the same person we were 10 years ago. Life just has its imprint on us, how we behave, how much patience we have, how much tolerance we have, how forgiving we are, how pig-headed we are, how stubborn. So, you do have it does enable you to be able to play different colours within the same character, which is exciting. There would be days where I would just turn to Robert and I go, you gotta help me here. I'm not sure where I'm at. Is this just after his time? Yes, okay, he's just time travelled. And where did I go back to again? I went to the meadow and I had that scene with the young Claire. Okay, now I got it. Okay. But yeah, I think being confused is also can be a good thing. But I had a strong physical tool for that, which was the wig. So anytime I had a wig on, I knew that I was playing a young Henry, and anytime I had my own hair, I knew I was playing the older Henry. So that was also a help. I'm a real strong believer in us having a very, very, very heavy influence in how we turn out, and which roads we go down, and which doors we close and which doors we keep open is all about the decisions that we make, and very little to do with luck and circumstance. I think it's obviously a combination of all of it. So I think it's a very challenging notion, and I think it's very challenging for our two key characters. The extent of how much of a say do they really get in being together and having control over their destiny? How much of that is fated, and how much of that is just meant to be?